And lost her brother, and we want you to remember her in prayer today. And so those three individuals, if you promise just to be praying this week for them, would you just wave at me? How many know if you keep living, you're going to find yourself in the same position if you have not already? And so by God's grace, the God of all comforts, will comfort them at this time. God bless you as we continue to worship together.
Happy Sabbath, church family. The presence of the Lord is here. Let's all join in and sing and welcome Him.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for allowing us to be in your house today. Father, we're praying today that the Holy Ghost might fill this place, that we might encounter you and experience you in a mighty way. Be with us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Welcome, welcome. Happy Sabbath. It's wonderful to see you out today. I was sort of waiting on a lapel mic. I don't know if it's coming or not. But we're going to go ahead. This morning is a really interesting morning. By the way, my name is Cheryl Buckins. Can you all hear me? I just got a text message. Many of you probably aren't aware that I have a daughter who is expecting, but I do have a daughter whose name is Jasmine, and Jasmine is expecting. I just got the text message from my son-in-law that she has dilated 8 centimeters. Thank you. Okay. Okay. One of these things up here. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So I got the call like at 3 o'clock this morning after a very busy week, and it's like, oh, I know what this call is all about. I know that it's Jasmine letting you know that her water broke. And sure enough, it was Jasmine. So I got up this morning and went to the hospital. She's at St. Anne's. Went to the hospital, was there with her for maybe about 3 hours, and it's like, we need this baby to be born by 8 o'clock. Needless to say, and I was debating now, shall I call Pastor and let him know that I'm not going to be able to make it, the venue, although I appreciate very much the participants, what shall I do? And at the same time, I got a call from a girlfriend that reminded me, well, you know, you made a commitment, and I'm aware that I made a commitment, but it's not every day that you have a grandson this morning, right? So, but nonetheless, I'm here. And after the panel discussion, I'll be easing on out down the road to St. Anne's to see where we're at with that baby. The baby will probably be born. It's another boy. So praise the Lord. Okay. At any rate, as I mentioned, I'm Cheryl Buckins, and I am a mental health advocate representing Beautiful Minds Mental Health Ministry, along with Marilyn Farrell. Is Marilyn in the house somewhere? Marilyn Farrell and Sandra Green. And Sandra, unfortunately, had to be out of town during this period, so life happens. It is a pleasure to be working in collaboration with the Health Ministries Department here at Ephesus, under the direction of Ben and Lee, as we present this weekend's Health Ministries programming. At this time, Ben is going to come forth and tell you a little bit about all of the great activities that will be happening this weekend. Is he somewhere around? Ben, here he comes. Hi, good morning.
Cheryl and her team for all of the hard work put into this weekend's programming. Thank you. You're in for a treat. This health fair weekend, we have some things that we haven't done before. We're calling this a simulation health fair. And one of the unique things that we're bringing in today, or tomorrow that you'll be able to see, is called an anatomy imaging machine. It's a 3D machine that's used in medical schools. It's used to replace a cadaver lab. And what's really interesting about this is that you'll have the opportunity to see what certain diseases look like that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when someone tells you they have metastatic cancer, what does that look like? We'll be able to pull up an image, and it's like a 7-foot iPad that you can basically open a body with your fingers. You can slice it open, you can zoom into the image if you want to see. It's an awesome bit of technology. It was featured in a TED Talk, and we have that right behind that curtain, but you'll only be able to see it tomorrow between 10 and 5. They shipped it out from California just for us. But that's only one aspect. We're also having a simulation surgery lab. So young people, yourself, if you've ever just been curious as far as what it's like to gown up and prepare for surgery, you'll have that opportunity. We also have a special guest, Adana the PA. She is a YouTube influencer, and she motivates young people to choose careers in medicine. And in addition to that, we're going to have volunteers from 2 of our local colleges, Career College and Ohio Dominican University, and they will be helping out with this endeavor. So I encourage you to come, get screened, taste some wonderful vegetarian food, and enjoy all the sights, sounds, and demonstrations that you can experience on this occasion. Thank you.
Looks like it's going to be an exciting weekend, and I certainly hope we have a large showing, not only from the members here in the church, but also from the community. Thank you for sharing that, Ben. Today, we are going to have a panel discussion, and the topic of our conversation this morning is the state of mental health in Black America, with emphasis on bipolar disorder, depression, substance abuse, and suicide, particularly in youth. And we'd also like to acknowledge at this point and thank yous in order. We want to thank Pastor Noah Washington and Pastor Hugh Black for this opportunity to share about a very important topic. We also like to acknowledge and thank our special guest for his attendance today. My mic seems to be cutting in and out. Can you all hear me? Okay. Is it on? Okay. The foot soldiers who have been out in the community talking to people, making them aware that this event is happening this weekend. So thank you to all, Tarshella, Hanks, Wanda, and there's so many others. The visual, Angela, Keith, and the list could go on and on. At this time, as I mentioned, we are fortunate to have a very special guest in our presence today who we'd like to acknowledge and take a moment to tell you a little bit about our special guest. Nope. Okay.
Well, we want you to stand up and just take a few minutes as we welcome one another. There is a special lady in our midst. You have not seen her in a while, but I want Sister Sobrian, if you would stand. We have missed you. And you don't look a day over 16, maybe 14. Would you stand to your feet if you got two good working legs? If you got one good working one, just go ahead and scoot over to two good people. Give them a real big hug and let them know the blessing of the Lord looks real good on you.
Hallelujah.
grateful for. How many of you had a difficult week? Trying week? Tough week? Well, how many know that God can take every one of your cares? Every one of your concerns? I'm talking to the wrong people this morning. How many know God is able? How many know He can take every one of your problems, every one of your situations? And I want to do something today. I don't want to just pray myself. I believe that God loves to hear His people when they pray. So would you find somebody next to you and just offer a word of prayer? I'm not going to tell you what to pray for. I'm just going to say pray for whatever's on your heart this morning. Whether it's a financial breakthrough, whether it's a blessing from the Lord in one way, shape, or form. We want to remember Sister Ruth Ann Thompson, Brother Hollingsworth, and we want to remember all those that have lost loved ones. Sister Hazel. So let's take a moment. Just find somebody around you, next to you, as we offer prayer this morning. See somebody by themselves, grab them into your prayer circle. I will be with you. The Lord says I will be with you. I will be with you. If you will only trust me, trust me, trust me, I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. If you will only trust me, trust me. Trust me. I'll fight your battle. I'll fight your battle. I'll fight your battles. If you will only trust me, trust me, trust me. Come on, let's lift our voice. I don't know who this is for. I'll never leave you. The Lord says I will never. I'll never leave you. I'll never is for somebody this week. I'll fight your battle.
I'll fight your battle.
I don't know who this is for, but the Lord says, I'll fight your battle.
I'll fight your
just so grateful and thankful that last night was not our last night. And that when we opened our eyes, we saw new mercies today. We're just so thankful that you love us in spite of ourselves. And we've come into your gates with thanksgiving and into your courts with praise, and are thankful because you have been so good to us. God, we come because we have so many things in our lives, on our minds, and on our hearts, have been troubling us and keep us awake at night and trouble us while we ride on 270 during the day. And we release every problem, worry, and care to you. We are tired of worrying about what we can't handle in the first place. We ask, Lord, that if there are sick among us, that their bodies will come into alignment with your word, and that your word is so powerful that it might speak healing over anyone's situations. We pray, Lord, for those that are in financial problems, that God, that you would bless them exceedingly and abundantly. Father, there are bereaved among us who have been crying because their loved ones have been laid to sleep. And you told us in your word that even though weeping endures for a night, joy comes in the morning. And I ask in Jesus' name that you would give beauty for ashes, strength for weakness, that the joy of the Lord might be their strength. God, we've come this morning because in spite of everything we've been through, we still got a little bit of joy. And we come because your word says that 2 or 3 are gathered, you promise to be in the building. And so because you're here today, we ask that you come down every aisle, that you sweep through every pew, and bless us according to our needs. We'll give your name the glory, the honor, and the praise. Our prayer today is that we would trust you more than we trust ourselves. In Jesus' name, let every glad heart say amen. Amen. Come on, one more time. I'll never leave you, say. I'll never. Come on, let's get around it. Anybody need this promise? He says, I'll never. Leave you. He says, I'll never. God bless you.
Thank you, God. Thank you.
We serve an amazing God, amen?
Amen.
We serve an amazing God. You know, when it comes to giving, it is one of my more challenging moments in my Christian journey when it comes to giving. I'm going to be honest. Every time I put a check, I pray, Lord, you know I ain't got it. You know I ain't got it, Lord. But what I do know is that this faith of giving, even if I emptied out my entire account, I know the Lord will still provide. Come on now. I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know how it's going to happen. But somehow the Lord makes a way. Come on now. The Lord. I've never heard testimony where someone said, I gave and the Lord didn't provide. No one ever gave that testimony. I did hear testimonies about how people said, I gave, I didn't have, and the Lord still multiplied. Come on now.
Amen.
And so today, as our deacons come forward to collect today's tithe and offering, there are 3 ways to give. You can give online, you can give cash or check, and you can give on your phone via the app. And so as they come forward to give, I want you to rest assured to know that the Lord will honor your sacrifice and that He will continue to provide for you. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for all that you've given to us. We thank you today for what you've provided for us and always making a way for us. So Father, as we give this small portion, we know that you do not need the money, but we do this as an act of worship. In Jesus' name, amen.
I see the invisible.
Today you're like, God, I've done something for you.
Yes.
Anybody like me, God's done at least one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, he's done one thing. Someone in the medical profession, you left your pager. It's got to be a doctor because pagers left in the 90s. And so, I don't know if somebody is paging you, so I have it. And thank you so much. God bless you.
We're going to continue our praise and worship this morning. You sound like you're riled up and ready to go. And I would say praise the Lord to that. We're going to sing about praising God. I hope you'll join in with us and sing to his name's honor and glory. Every praise is to our God. Every word of worship with one accord. Every praise is to our God.
today, but I just feel the spirit of worship. Listen. I am persuaded, Lord, to love. I have been changed to bless your name. We're going to get to the power, but anybody thankful for? I am persuaded by this great gospel forever. We want to be up there right now, based on this word. Come on, everybody say, come on, lift your voice. Everybody say, I am persuaded. Lord, to love you. Lord, to love you. I have been changed. To bless your name. I am constrained. By this great God. If you take this moment and carry it with you for the rest of the week, I promise it'll be the best week of your life. God bless you.
You just want to step out of it, to step out of the whole race, the whole business. The monstrosity of being alive overwhelms you.
If you have depression, if you have anxiety, if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, if you have any kind of mental health condition, this is not something to ignore.
Depression, frustration, anxiety, pain, disillusion. It's just a natural part of the process of becoming a stronger version of yourself.
The thing that keeps one living is a sense of future. That there will be a tomorrow, and tomorrow I'm going to do this, and then the day after I'm going to do that.
Get started. And I'm going to tell you right now, it won't be easy. It will be hard because life is hard. That's what life is.
With depression, one of the most important things you can realize is that you're not alone.
I've been places and someone said, well, you lost an arm and legs, you have a right to be depressed. And I stopped it. I was like, depression is real.
No matter what you're going through right now, doesn't mean that it's not going to end. I think too often we think about the stresses that we're dealt with right now, and we think that there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
All that you can see is darkness, and everything that you try to do just kicks you right back in the face, and you just can't seem to get yourself out.
You don't have to go through something traumatic. Some are caused by something traumatic. Some can be a chemical imbalance in the brain.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Life is hard. Life is challenging. There are ups and downs.
And these challenges that you face, they're going to do their best to take you down. Do not let them.
Of course you have to work. Of course you have to show up. Your team needs you. Life needs you. Your family needs you. Life is for the living.
Depression is not only normal, it's essential, and be grateful for it because it allows you to reorder yourself at a higher level.
I speak what's on my heart. And I gave my speech, and as I was closing, I kind of mentioned some depression. Because I was coming out of the winter months, and it hit me again this past winter, and I went and saw the doctor. So it was on my mind, and it came up. And as I was saying, I thought, this generation of people probably aren't connected to what I'm saying. When I walked off the stage, and they lined up, the amount of people that thanked me for talking about my life. And here I was, I thought they didn't want it. I thought I was stepping out of line. No, it needs to be talked about because it's not just this generation. It's people are realizing more and more this issue. And the more we talk about it, the easier it is for people to be honest with themselves and get the help they need.
Line up those problems and confront them, face them, fight them. Do not let them bring you down.
Do not personally identify with depression. See it as you see winter, and winter always leads to spring and summer again. See it as you see nighttime. Nighttime becomes daytime again.
Hold on to that fundamental quality of faith. And on the other side of your pain is something good.
Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. No matter what you're going through right now, doesn't mean that it's not going to end.
Stand up, dig in, let those challenges raise you up, let them elevate you, let their demands and their trials make you stronger. Adversity you face today turn you into a better person tomorrow.
You are worth.
Okay, thank you. We are fortunate to have some very special guests in our presence today who we'd like to acknowledge and tell you a little about in a minute. But first, we'd like to share with you why today's discussion is so important. In January 2017, an article in Scientific American, the title reads, "Is Mental Health Declining?" The author, Edmund S. Higgins, cites some disturbing facts drawn from additional sources, such as the National Institute of Mental Health. Suicide rates per 100,000 people have increased to a 30-year high. Substance abuse, particularly of opiates, has become epidemic. Disability awards for mental disorders have dramatically increased since 1980, and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to keep up with a surge in post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. If for the general population mental health is declining, where do the Black communities across America fit into this scenario? Are we faring better, you think? About the same? Or worse than the general population as far as the state of our mental health? What do you think? This is kind of impromptu. What do you think? You think worse? Okay. Well, according to National Alliance on Mental Health, or NAMI, African Americans are 20% more likely to experience some serious mental health problems than the general population. In addition, we are less likely to acknowledge and seek treatment for mental health illnesses, which ultimately not only affects us, but our families, our loved ones, friends, our church communities, our co-workers, acquaintances, or just our fellow man on the street. We are all affected to one degree or another. We are having this conversation today because it is important to realize that this is a real problem, and like the gentleman said in the video, it's time to talk about it and keep talking about it until we come to some consensus in terms of how we can collaborate to make a difference in the lives of people who suffer from mental illness. And believe it or not, whether you accept it or not, each of us at one point in our lives will experience some episode of mental illness. So it is relevant for each and every person here today. By the way, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it today. So as we begin our panel discussion today on the state of mental health in Black America, with emphasis on bipolar disorder, depression, substance abuse, and suicide, we bring to our panel a level of expertise, experience, knowledge, and resources which can aid our community in dealing with the reality of mental health, in mental illness, one Black community at a time, and continuing to expand out to Black communities across the entire nation and ultimately the world. So at this time, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce our panelists, and once again, thank you for being here today. We're going to start with Pastor Washington. Pastor Noah L. Washington is an ordained minister of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and has pastored and co-pastored churches in the state of Maryland. He has conducted revivals and seminars both nationally and internationally about knowing God's will for your life, understanding how God speaks to you, family life, and dating. Currently, Pastor Washington is the lead pastor of the Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church in Columbus, Ohio, where they strive to energize in worship, engage in ministry, and affect in community in the northeast section of Columbus, Ohio. He is also a published author who has been awarded for his community involvement and partnership with city officials. Pastor Washington holds a master's in divinity degree from Andrews University in Marion Springs, Michigan. He is a certified marriage and premarital counselor through Prepare and Enrich, and is currently working on his doctoral dissertation titled An Alternative to American Dating Practices for Young Adults. He is married to his college sweetheart, Twyla Drew, and together they have a son, Noah Alexander, and daughter, Drew McKenzie. Our second panelist is Kimberly G. Lewis. Kimberly is a licensed professional clinical counselor. She holds an educational specialist degree in community counseling and a master's degree in counseling, MA, from the field of mental health. In the University of Alabama in Birmingham. Kimberly has worked in the field of mental health for over 19 years and is currently an independent practitioner in the Gahanna and Reynoldsburg, Ohio areas. She provides individual, family, and couples therapy for adults and adolescents seeking to manage their responses to depression, anxiety, self-esteem, marital and relationship concerns, grief, loss, adjustment issues, and phase of life concerns such as divorce, aging, and life transitions. Thirdly, we have, and I know in your brochure it mentions Rochelle Martin. However, we're honored to have Rochelle in our presence right there in the front. Give her a hand for coming out. She is the Executive Director of NAMI, Franklin County. However, in her stead, we have a very accomplished professional in the person of Marla Percy. Marla has a bachelor's in social work and a master's in counseling. Marla worked on a research project sponsored by the Ohio Department of Health and the Office of Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention for more than 10 years. It was an abstinence until marriage project to determine if the project could be successful. She has researched and written curriculums to confront and combat human sex trafficking and other social issues faced by youth today. Marla also volunteered with NAMI for over a year in the high schools to help end the stigma surrounding mental health conditions. She is an educator, a motivational speaker, and an individual who has lived experience with a mental health condition. Okay, and fourth, we have Andrew Moss. Andrew R. Moss is the Director of Stabilization Services at Mary Haven and has 13 years of experience in behavioral health and has worked as a direct care provider, a trainer, and an educator in addition to other supervisory roles. Mr. Moss has supervised the detoxification treatment programs at Mary Haven since 2006. He also currently holds an adjunct faculty position in the Social and Human Services Department at Columbus State Community College. He has been a member of the treatment committee at the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professional Board since 2013. Andrew was also a longtime volunteer and trainer for suicide prevention services at North Central Mental Health. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in counselor education, both from the Ohio State University. He is a licensed professional clinical counselor and a licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. Lastly, we have Sharonda Palmore there on the end. Sharonda Palmore is a licensed social worker. She currently serves as the program director for the Pro Bono Counseling Program at Mental Health America. She began her social work career in Washington, D.C. Both from the same area, huh? Okay. After graduating with her MSW from Howard University. Sharonda's background includes providing trauma-informed care to children with behavioral health needs and to women, families impacted by addiction and family violence. Sharonda has provided education related to domestic violence and crisis response to medical and social work students. Additionally, Sharonda has provided supervision to social work case managers working with refugee and immigrant populations since 2014. She is passionate about equal access to mental health care and helping others in their holistic development. So at this time, if we could just give a warm welcome to those panelists who took time out of their busy schedules to come here today, and we are truly grateful and appreciative. Okay, today we'd like to start out our panel discussion, and this is open to anyone, okay? According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Affairs, African Americans are 20% more likely to report having serious psychological distress than non-Hispanic whites. Yet, young adult African Americans, especially those with higher levels of education, are less likely to seek mental health services than their white counterparts, according to a study published by the American Psychological Association. So my question to you, and this is an open question, if African Americans are 20% more likely to report psychological distress than non-Hispanic whites, why are we less likely to seek mental health services?
Oh, it's good. Okay. Hi, I'm Marla Percy. I'm from NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Franklin County. It's the largest grassroots agency focused on advocacy, education, and supporting individuals with a mental health condition. As for me, because I had a lived experience with a mental health condition at the age of 5. I was in the bed with my mother when my father shot her. So I grew up with post-traumatic stress disorder, undiagnosed, untreated. I didn't seek treatment until I was over 32 years old, which is when I began the counseling journey. And one of the reasons was because of the stigma attached to seeking treatment. There were 7 of us there that day that watched that happen, me and my brothers and sisters. And none of us got treatment for that. And we were discussing earlier one of the reasons that I believe that part of that is that culturally, just African Americans culturally, through what we've come through systematically, having to exhibit a certain strength about us. And even having weakness, I was sharing this when we were prior to us coming out, is systematically and culturally we had to be strong as a people. Exhibiting any type of weakness could have got us killed. So I think even in terms of me and you know, my upbringing and just being brought up in a way that, okay, look, you know, keep it together. Even keeping stuff like that in the household, like if there was domestic violence or something in the home, not letting that outside of the house and keeping those types of secrets. I think that that's one of the, because I think that number is actually larger. I think that there's more African Americans that suffer with mental health conditions at any given point in their life, not all their life, but at some point in their lives. And I think that it's not addressed because of certain stigmas that are attached to seeking those types of treatments for mental health conditions that is in our community culturally, that's part of our culture. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be addressed and reduced. And that's one of the reasons I think we're here, is because that has to be addressed on some level. I mean, individuals get sad for some period of time. Depression, you know, you have situational depression. But if you're dealing with something for a significant amount of time, then maybe there's something presenting itself, a challenge that might need to be addressed.
Say that there's a mistrust of professionals that keeps individuals from seeking care, whether it's the thought of this individual is coming to break up our family. So if we disclose that there is a need here, we disclose that there's a parent with a mental illness, that will impact the children, that will impact the family dynamics. There's also this mistrust that, do you even understand who I am? Do you understand what I'm bringing to you as a professional, and will you know how to respond to me? So the work that I've done, both from the administrative side as well as from the clinical side, people often express that mistrust that they're going to be in front of somebody who will take into consideration what's being presented before them and respond in a culturally appropriate way.
What she just said, as far as the stigma attached to mental health conditions, because traditionally the African American culture sought help through their ministers, through their elders, through their grandparents. To step outside of that speaks to the idea that I don't have enough faith in God, or that my spiritual life is weak. So a lot of African Americans shy away from traditional counseling services because they feel like it conflicts with the belief that they have spiritually. Additionally, what I hear from a lot of the clients who visit our practice is, wow, you all look like me. So many times people step away from seeking help because they don't find those individuals who look like them and who in turn they feel like will understand what they are experiencing.
I was just going to add to that comment. I think there's a very real history of misdiagnosis with people in the African American community because the providers didn't understand the culture. And for example, since about 2010, African American young boys have been diagnosed at really high rates with ADHD. And within the culture of the African American community, that behavior is normal. It's kinesthetic, it's energetic, it's interactive, and so you can't compare this kind of broad expectation of behavioral norms when looking at our community. So I think that has pushed people away at times. If you've ever been to a provider who you just didn't feel like was listening or wasn't connecting with what you were saying, or maybe didn't know what you were saying, that reinforces the mistrust.
Two things Dr. Lewis spoke of, one of them, which is just, I think we feel that we're not a Christian if something's wrong. And people will tell us that you cannot be depressed and saved at the same time. And so we will really just sit in denial about what's really going on because we'll come to church, we'll sing, we'll even feel the presence of God, but then when amen is said, we're still dealing with whatever we were dealing with. So I think that's a big part of the Black community. The other thing, from my vantage point, what I've seen is we will humorize dysfunction. So we'll say things like, "Oh man, I know Uncle Joe is crazy, but now something's really wrong with him." But we will make humor and light out of it so that we can deny the fact that somebody has some real challenges. So we'll make jokes about it as a way to not deal with what's really going on. Yeah.
But I just wanted to say something real quick because you made a valid point, is that our brain is an organ just like our kidneys, our liver, and every other organ in our body. And just like you are mentally, we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. Either you're mentally healthy or you're mentally unhealthy, just like you're physically healthy or you're physically unhealthy. And your brain has the ability to get sick, just like your heart can get sick, just like your lungs can get sick, just like your liver can get sick. So one of the things that we want to do is not treat our brain any differently. If you had a broken arm, you wouldn't say, "Oh, it's not broke. It's not broke. I could use it." No, you would go get help for that. You would go get that, fixed. And so you don't want to walk around pretending like you're not challenged or experiencing some type of challenge when you really are. And I really love the idea of even having that representation in the church, that you could step to somebody and say, "Hey, you know what, I've been experiencing this particular type of challenge." And that is, we all get sad sometimes, but we all have the ability to shake it. We could move forward. It's when it's disrupting your ability to daily function, your daily delivery. You can go to work, for you to not struggle, challenge with that. So if something like that sense of sadness you can't shake for more than 2 weeks, then something could possibly be stepping forward to present itself to you. And you should take a look at that, present back. Like, okay, I see you're challenging me. Let me acknowledge you and see about you. Deal with you.
Would you, for a moment, like to talk about the mental health first aid? The mental health first aid. Can you hear me now? All right. Or anyone, as a way to be able to know when someone or signs that someone is struggling with?
Well, one of the things that should be clear is that we all have a sense of self-awareness. Usually if something goes wrong, you're like, oh, that feels funny, something's a little different. Well, it's the same thing when you're presented with a mental health challenge. You know how you're aware with your daily process and how you function typically and go through your day appropriately. Well, when something steps up to present itself, it could be some of the signs, like I was just saying, you have a sense of sadness that you really can't shake. Usually we can shake that, like when something might happen, we have a sense of sadness we can shake. If it's lasted more than 2 weeks and you really can't shake it, and there's no particular reason why you would be experiencing this type of sadness, then that might be an indication that something's trying to present itself. It could come in terms of how you sleep. You know, like if you have your sleep patterns. Well, all of a sudden you go to sleep at 11 o'clock and wake up by 12. Then you cannot sleep for the entire rest of the night. And right before you get ready to go to work, now you're sleepy. Then the whole day you're struggling. And this is consistently happening night after night. That's insomnia or hypersomnia. You go home from work and you go to sleep. You don't get up until you got to go back to work. That's an indication that there might be a challenge present itself to you. Or just any abnormal out behaviors that are not consistent with your daily activity, and it suddenly starts presenting to you. You know your life, you know your awareness, and especially if you're dealing with a mental health condition already that you know of, it's important to really take care of yourself, like eat right, sleep right, have good healthy habits, develop coping skills in advance, reading, listening to music, de-stressors. We all have stress throughout our daily, throughout our day. So you want to develop coping skills to deal with that. Establish balance. Decide what to cheat on. I mean, everybody cheats on something in life. And so if you don't decide what to cheat on, then the world will decide for you. And it's usually something you can't afford to cheat, like your family. So what I'm saying in terms of de-stressing and bringing balance into your life, you want to definitely focus on the things that you want to prioritize and don't neglect those things to establish just a sense of well-being and some balance.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question will be for Sharonda. African Americans are more likely to experience certain factors that increase the risk for developing a mental health condition. What are some of the social determinants that increase the risk of developing a mental illness if you are African American? And then what is the link between mental health and these social determinants?
So a few of the social determinants of health would be things like poverty, your social economic status, crime in your neighborhood, experiencing racism. And so when we think about those social determinants of health, we're thinking about the environments that we find ourselves in. Unfortunately, African Americans are disproportionately represented in these categories that I just mentioned. So it's not to say that all African Americans are impoverished or all experience crime, but we unfortunately, again, experience those determinants in a way that impacts our community. So when you think about being in an environment where you are anxious about what it looks like to get from your home to school, or what it looks like to be able to get affordable health care, it begins to impact your mental status. So I get calls, again, into my agency often where individuals are experiencing depression. So some of those symptoms that were mentioned, or they're experiencing anxiety, or they're experiencing, they're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. They're unable to eat, they're unable to function, they're not able to navigate the day-to-day life based on some of these environmental factors, and that takes a toll on the individual's mental health. And then people then begin to present to providers or to their doctors with those symptoms that we've identified for multiple mental health issues.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Shalonda. And you've already sort of touched on this, so I won't, reiterate the point other than the fact that many African Americans are uncomfortable with the healthcare system because they don't feel as though the professionals that are there to serve them understand the culture. And so oftentimes they might misdiagnose or trivialize our experience. Correct? What can we do to change that? Is there anything that we can do to change that? Maybe perhaps have more people of color who are licensed social workers. Maybe for those of you who are looking for a career, maybe decide to become a licensed social worker so that you can impact the growing number of African Americans who are experiencing mental health issues. What do you say to that? How can we change that?
I think you said it. I think we need representation in the profession. And I teach because I want to encourage people not only to enter the profession, but to be advocates for those who are underserved and advocates for themselves in a lot of ways. And so I think reaching out and recruiting and guiding and encouraging people to enter this world can make a big difference.
Okay. And is that currently happening? Or is there marketing pieces out there that say, well, if you're looking for a career, why not consider becoming a licensed social worker?
In pockets, my experience is it is happening in some parts of the community, the healthcare community. It's not as much as it should be.
Okay. Well, that might be an initiative we might work on.
I think that it doesn't even have to be so extreme as an individual getting a bachelor's degree. I think that if we as individuals, if we advocate for one another, if we support and educate one another, if even in these types of venues where you give individuals information that would educate them, give them insight into, this situation, because I think a lot of what you're saying is true. I think that we have been systematically driven to distrust populations just because of our cultures and what we've been through. But I think that we could advocate, volunteer, educate, get educated. Google is like the smartest person on earth. You could Google everything. And so, you could Google how can I advocate for individuals. You might see Mr. Jones down the street and see that he's challenged. He's disheveled. Is anybody paying attention to him? There's numbers that, like NetCare and different organizations that you could just just a citizen concerned for individuals in your neighborhood, because I don't live where you live. You don't live where I live, but you do see people who are challenged in your neighborhood, and you can pick up the phone and say, hey, there's a guy I've been seeing for 2 or 3 weeks now, and I think he might be struggling. Can you send a CIT officer out to maybe do a safety check on him? It doesn't even have to be real deep or real over the top. Just advocate, support, educate, don't bully, end the stigma, reduce the stereotyping around individuals with mental health conditions, because they're everywhere. We don't have to be in colleges to see them. You can walk down this street and find somebody that you could literally advocate for.
And I want to add to that, because I think you asked earlier about mental health first aid. So we can always have professionals who are able to respond to the needs of the community. But NAMI, as well as Mental Health America Franklin County, do a training course called Mental Health First Aid, where individuals like you here in the community are able to be trained around signs related to mental health disorders, so you know what it looks like and you know how to respond. It's an 8-hour training course, so you all can invite a trainer into the church. So make sure that, again, when you see someone, you know the resources. Because we're not asking everyone to be a professional, but we are asking people to know how to respond, so that people don't feel like they're alone. But if you don't know where to go, you might look the other way. We might say, well, they just need to go to counseling, or again, that's none of my business. But really, mental health is all of our business, because again, we're going to be impacted, whether it's our own mental health concerns or the concerns of a family member or someone we work with. So again, mental health first aid is an amazing resource that you could bring in to the community so that we all know how to respond.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And that is something that we would like to bring to as this mental health first aid. So how many of y'all might be interested in that, to be able to recognize the signs of when somebody might be struggling? Okay, well, very good. So maybe that's something that we can look into. This question is for Kimberly. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, approximately 1 in 5 youth ages 13 to 18, which is 21.4%, experience a severe mental disorder at some point during their life. What is the link? And we've already kind of talked about this. And I guess it probably really goes across all ages within the Black community. So what is the link? I'm going to answer it anyway. What is the link between social determinants of mental health and the mental health of Black children? We already talked about adults, and our answer, it would be the same. That if you were born into certain conditions based upon your socioeconomic, what's happening in your environment, that would determine the likelihood or the propensity to develop a mental health issue. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
When you're looking at some of the social determinants that she talked about, poverty, racism, crime in your neighborhood, poor school systems, inadequate access to health care and mental health care, when you're looking at all of those things, anything that we have been exposed to repeatedly either becomes something that then becomes traumatic, or we tend to normalize it as if there's nothing wrong with it. So if you think about those kids that grow up in neighborhoods where there's crime everywhere, if the tendency is to normalize that, it perpetuates. So nobody sees anything wrong with it, so they keep going. Some of the things that I've noticed with young people who have been exposed to these types of factors, they go to school, they get mislabeled or misdiagnosed with having ADHD, when in actuality it's anxiety because they are stressed, because there is no food in the home, the parents are fighting, there is crime in their neighborhood. So it leads to, some of the links leads to a lot of misdiagnosis, it leads to inadequate care, because if you're diagnosed with the wrong disease and they give a prescription and it doesn't fit, what happens? Additionally, there is research that shows that children and adults who are repeatedly exposed to these things actually exhibit the same exact symptoms of those who have been to war and experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. So repeatedly being exposed to these things actually gives you the same type of behavior, where it's that hypersensitivity, that overstimulation, being very depressed or very angry, very agitated, very irritable, lack of sleep, hypersleeping, weight loss, weight gain, lots of different scenarios that can occur because of that link between that, these factors and what these children and adults are experiencing. The only way to fix it, or one of the only ways to fix it, is we have to interrupt the cycle. And we have to educate and we have to teach people that this is not normal. We don't have to live this way. And let's look at the actual things that are contributing to the behaviors and the things that people are experiencing in the community.
Okay, very good. And one thing I noticed, I don't know if you all have noticed it, but being a Black person, and oftentimes navigating in Black communities, we just seem mad. And I guess that explains it. You know, you walk around and you're looking for somebody to just smile and be warm, but we seem just mad and like we always have a chip, you know? And that could very well be what you just explained, that we're dealing with lots of issues, that we've been traumatized, and so we don't feel it. It doesn't emanate from us out that we're warm and fuzzy people because we're going through so much. Yeah, that's something. All right, Pastor Washington. The American Holistic Health Association states that an individual is a whole, made up of interdependent parts, which are the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Isaiah 58:11 gives us assurance that God will guide us continually, watering our lives when we are dry and keeping us healthy too. What is a holistic lifestyle, and how can it contribute to good mental health?
I would argue a holistic lifestyle is just being balanced in every area of life. I was sharing with the team before we came out, I think a lot of balance in our life is disrupted by the people we live with. Somebody should tweet that, it was deep or not. Like I meet so many people who, you know, we talk about not seeing counselors. I talk to a lot of people who don't want to go and see someone because they just don't want to go to that place of trauma that they've experienced. So they put it in a real secret place in their life that if certain buttons are not pushed, you'll forget that you even experienced some level of trauma. So, I mean, to answer your question, I think it's, you know, maintaining balance in every area of a life. The reason why I think family has so much to do with it because, forgive me for being redundant, there was a study done some years ago where some counselors went to look at patients in a psych ward to check out behaviors and to see how they're functioning, to see, you know, how do they function with, you know, having some mental challenges. So they're writing up their reports on them, on how they're functioning. And then they also started seeing their family members that were coming to see them. So they started writing reports on them, and then they started writing reports on family members that were coming to see them. When they concluded their report, they said something that was extremely interesting. They said these people in the psych ward are actually very normal. And so people were shocked. They said, no, they can't be normal. They're admitted to a psych ward. They said, no, they are very normal based on the family they come from. In other words, there was a role that they had to play based on the family that was. So I think a lot is pushed, or a lot of people fall into so much trauma based on their domestic situation. My mom, early in her career, was a DC public school teacher, and she taught special ed, which some have labeled as a holding cell until they get old enough to go to prison. And so, y'all missed what I just said. And so she was saying, she would come home saying, son, these kids literally, they cannot pay attention, not because they can't read or write, not because they can't learn, not because they're not able to, not intelligent enough, but they have seen so much trauma that when they come to school, she dealt with kids who had seen their parents get shot, or seeing policemen at the house every other day, a child whose homes were part of the crack house epidemic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They couldn't function in the classroom. You're dealing with all this, and now you're telling me to come down, sit, and look at a blackboard and learn? I can't do that. And so a lot of it is, a lot of people are struggling just based on the fact that when they leave work, they got to go home. They struggle with that. Like their mental space is just not in a good. It's hard to maintain balance based on the people in their lives.
Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? You know,
and I want to say it's hard to chase family. I don't want y'all to leave here saying, hey, y'all ain't my family no more. I need a new family. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. That's your family. You can't trade. There are no trades. But I just think it's difficult. It's challenging. We have parents that are having problems because they are, this is a question I get all the time, you know, Pastor, I'm still raising my adult kids.
Yeah.
And my adult kids are stressing me. I thought when they got 18, I'd be good to go. Or stressors on the workplace. It's just hard to maintain balance based on life, what, you know, the people we're around, etc. But I think it's possible. there's some work that needs to go into what helps us to just maintain balance. I think we allow too many things to affect us, and we are not strong enough to be able to do what we need to do without buying in to people who don't have balance in their own lives, who pour into us. So I would just say it's a lot to do with people that are around us.
Okay, well that certainly gives you something to chew on, doesn't it? And as far as balance, like for example, like including exercise in your life, the inclusion of developing a relationship with
diet, exercise, your relationship with God, holistic, learning boundaries, when to say no, when to say yes. This thing that I've been on lately, I want to be what God thought about me when He first thought about me. I think, once we get to a place where we're just the epitome of what God thought about us and maybe balance in those areas, overindulgence in any one area is not balance. And so, if we can just be temperate, that's a good Adventist word for you guys. If we can be temperate in all areas of our life, that helps to maintain balance.
Okay, very good, very good. And time is just quickly passing. We want to only have this discussion for about 45 minutes and then open it up to you for question and answer. Do I see some people sleeping out there? No? You're ready to ask questions? How many of you are ready to ask questions? Okay, all right, so then we just need to hit, okay, just a second here. I just want to hit depression right quick. Marla, in a very short, abbreviated form, can you just tell us what depression is? You already kind of talked about it. You talked about that, so we don't need that. We don't need it because we talked about it. What about bipolar disorder? Sharonda, can you just give us a quick summation of what bipolar disorder is?
Yes, bipolar disorder is a mood disorder that impacts your mood, your energy, and your activity level. Oftentimes people are described as having a very low mood or a very high mood. So you might see a person who can't get out of bed for weeks on end, and then the next time you see them, they're redecorating their house, they're spending an extreme amount of money, they seem like they're able to go non-stop, and it's as if you're dealing with a person that you did not just see weeks previous, unable to function and engage in daily life. And so there's different ways in which that presents with individuals and how long those periods last, but that is bipolar, the quick definition.
And can I add just one little thing to that? We have to get away from the education and telling people, I hear people say all the time, girl, she's so bipolar. There's no such thing. We're talking about people who have significant, this is a significant difficulty to functioning. And so it's a very, very large swing in the mood. So it's not, I was sitting here and I was talking and somebody called me on the phone and then I got in a bad mood. That's not bipolar disorder. We're talking about people, like she said, they're depressed for 2 weeks or more period of time and can't get out of bed, hopelessness, that type of thing. And then they swing to the other end where they're just living without rules, basically. Impulsive, risk-taking, that type of thing. That's what we're talking about.
Okay. I just want to add real quick to that too, because she said something that was really significant. And it's talking about reducing the stigma around mental health conditions so people will seek treatment. And one of the things that we can do also is not use stigmatizing language like, oh, Lisa, she's bipolar. No, if a person has breast cancer, you would say, Lisa is breast cancer. Or Lisa is prostate cancer. You would say, Lisa has prostate cancer. Or Lisa has breast cancer. So that's some of the what we're dealing with when they're saying, oh, she's this or she's that. So you can say Lisa has or has a lived experience with that or is living with that. But to call her that is that's stigmatizing and stereotyping people too. Oh, she's just bipolar. Don't listen to her. Oh my God. You know, yeah. So that is a very stigmatizing reaction to have to it.
Just to be more sensitive in our choice of language. Okay. And then finally, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Andrew, tell us a little bit about substance abuse. We know that it's very prominent in the Black community. Why, and what can we do to deal with substance abuse?
So substance abuse is, it's anybody in this room has the potential for substance abuse, and people come to that road in different ways. Sometimes it's you get injured and you get prescribed painkillers, and that's what's happening a lot with people in many communities. It depends on your exposure to it, at what age. People who are exposed to it at younger ages or who have less supervision and structure are more likely to engage in substance use behavior. So what it really means is that substance has now become the priority at some point. All normal priorities that we would all say are important and valuable, your children, your job, your families, become secondary. And so it's also like mental health, it's very brain-based. It has to do with the reward pathway in your brain and the chemicals that get released when you use a substance. But the good news is it's also very treatable. And as much stigma as there is around mental health, there may be even more stigma around addiction. And so that's why it's really, really important that we don't use stigmatizing language around addiction as well. To add to your point, when we say somebody's an addict, somebody's a crackhead, I mean, that is the kind of language that prevents people from reaching out to get help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I add something real quick to that? Because individuals that have mental health conditions, a lot of times that's what they do. Because they're not seeking treatment, they're undiagnosed, they turn to substance in order to deal with their mental health condition. So a lot of individuals that have mental health conditions also have substance abuse disorder because they're treating their own mental health condition with substance disorder.
Okay, very good, excellent. This concludes the first part of our panel discussion, and once again I want to thank the panelists for the wealth of information and experience they provided. Before we open it up for question and answer, we'd just like to distribute a quick survey. We want your input. We need to hear your voices in terms of how we can collaborate, what we can do, what you feel the needs are in our community. So if you could just take a moment, if any of this information, how it has impacted you, if it's impacted you, and then while we're doing this, we're doing two things at once. While we're doing that, we can be answering questions. So is there someone who has a question that would like to step to any one of the mics that is nearest you in the aisles there? Okay. Hi, Linda.
She stepped away from the desk, but hopefully anyone on the panel can address this. The example that was shared was that perhaps you might, who we perceive as having some difficulty, and we might call for a CIT officer. And in light of what's going on in the police force in the Black community, with the lack of trust, with mishandling of situation, unnecessary mortality. Give us insight about what is a CIT officer and how that's different from just calling 911 or calling the police when we see someone that we think is out of sorts.
I'll do my best to answer that. A CIT officer receives special training to interact with people who have mental health issues and substance use issues. And the goal of that is that they take a different approach than what we see in the media, what we see in our communities, those horrible examples of mistreatment, and especially with somebody who's as vulnerable as someone who is severely mentally ill. they do need a different type of interaction. So those officers go through extensive training to become more skilled in doing that. And what they've also started doing in addition to that is working with rapid response teams, which are made up of mental health professionals from different organizations like Southeast Mental Health or Southeast Incorporated here in Columbus. They will go into the community with the officer and then try to link the person to the right service rather than trying to take them to jail. And just personally, this is my belief and my experience. I think the criminalization of drug use has been a disaster for a lot of us. And putting somebody in jail for a drug offense doesn't stop them from going back out and using again. There's no rehab that happens in that setting. So I love to see that connection from the incident on the street to getting people where they need to be. That's what makes a difference.
Yeah, first off, this is excellent. I wanted to say that it seems as though there's a wave of mental illness that even the estimates are probably low. And it appears that we don't have enough resources if we all did show up. So a point on what do we do about getting the resources that are required. And then the next thing is somewhat of an advertisement. I think another impediment for seeking help is that we're not sure it works. So if you can give some type of advertisement that if you seek help, it'll work, and then what does work look like? Does it mean that I'm done, or is it a chronic illness that I have to stick with?
I would like to answer the latter piece of that because I'm old, I forgot the first question. As far as whether or not it works, this is what I say to my clients all the time. Those that have, as my professor would call the worry well, those of us who on our own free will can go in and receive help. It does work, but you have to do the work. You can't come to therapy or come to a mental health center and just sit there and expect them to fix you. It's no different than if you have a heart problem or diabetes, you must take your insulin. You must do exercise or do whatever they prescribe for you. It's the same thing with therapy. If you put in the work, it will work. Additionally, it's not just about that setting in the therapist's office. You have to develop that network of people that support you outside. So for example, when I had a foot surgery, I couldn't just go and just say, okay, the surgeon fixed my foot. It was, do I need to go to physical therapy? Can my husband and my children help me as I climb stairs? Can they support me if I am in pain and need something additionally? You asked about ongoing care. It depends on what the diagnosis is. There are some people who go through situational issues where they can come in and they can do what we call brief therapy. And they can have 6-8 sessions and they've dealt with that issue or that factor that is concerning to them and they are able to move on. There are other people with more significant impairments where it is a lifelong course of treatment. Maybe not consecutively, but it's that making sure I'm maintaining outside of that therapist or that hospital environment, making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, coming in and having those checkups, so to speak. And then when I notice when I'm doing self-awareness and notice those self-signs that I'm slipping or I'm going back to where I was, I know that that's a cue for me to get back in to those providers who were assisting me. So it's two parts. I've got to put in the work, I've got to do what's prescribed, and then I also have to do some self-management and help build a team around me to support me so that I can continue in a good space.
And then in response to the resources that are available, I believe there are more resources than people sometimes are aware of. So it's a matter of starting those conversations, whether it's with your pastor, whether it's with your physician. It's asking where those resources are so that people can point you in the right direction. I work, again, for Mental Health America, Franklin County, and that's what we do. You call into us and you say, I don't know where to go in terms of seeking mental health services. I don't know where I would get a psychiatrist. And that's part of our job, is to direct you to the support groups, to direct you to the counseling services. I lead a program for individuals who may be uninsured or underinsured in need of short-term counseling. So those resources are out there, and so our goal is to put those resources in your hand and letting you know what works best, what your needs are, and that's my plug there.
Okay, it was mentioned on the panel the frequency with which our young African American boys are labeled having ADHD or learning disabilities and different things, and all of the factors that contribute to that. And I noticed when I have 3 children, and 2 of them are male, and when my sons were young, as early as elementary school, I noticed that some of the teachers were very quick to want to label them and to want to relegate them to special ed, but I knew what their capabilities were, and I resisted and refused that. And I found that over their entire educational period from kindergarten through 12, I had to advocate. Like every year I'm there fighting with the teachers. And my sons are fine, but, and one of them has autism, but he's in his 2nd year at Ohio State now. You know what I mean? And so, but they quickly want to tell you, they quickly want to tell you to medicate your children, you know, for these, you know, conditions when they don't need it. And so I did see other people, I observed other people over the years who did embrace these labels and allow their children to be relocated and medicated way too early while their brains were still developing. And oftentimes those children had a lot more problems over their lifetime, which just personally I wonder if some of it had to do with having the medication introduced too early and unnecessarily. But anyway, my question is this. How do we educate parents, African American parents, at an early age, young parents, to understand that the education system, yes, we do have a good education system, relatively speaking, in this country, but you have to be there, you have to pay attention, you have to advocate for your children. You can't just accept everyone's word every time they say something about your child. You have to question if your child's having an issue, why. You know, if there's a behavioral issue, why. I mean, I'm not going to keep going on, but like for instance, my daughter, who could read before she even went to kindergarten, she was in kindergarten, and every parent-teacher conference, everything, I showed up there. The teacher never said anything negative to me. The last conference in the spring, she comes to me and tells me she thinks my daughter has a learning disability and that my daughter doesn't speak and she can't read. I said, she's reading books, small chapter books. She was like, oh no, that's not possible. Well, I talked to my daughter. Every time my daughter raised her hand, she was ignored by the teacher. She wouldn't call on her. Every time that she tried to do anything, the teacher wouldn't acknowledge her, so she just stopped. And she didn't tell me, my daughter didn't tell me until I asked her at the end of the school year. But this teacher was going to try to hold my daughter back in kindergarten. So I'm just saying, and there are a lot of good teachers. They had a lot of good teachers over the years, but how do we help people understand that just because someone initially gives your child a label or tells you they should have medication because they've got ADHD, this, that, or the other, how do we help young parents understand what they have got to do to be there and advocate for their children and not allow them to be victimized? That's my question.
I don't know anything about that, but if you turn around, we have a Columbus Adventist Academy and our teachers would love to educate your babies. God bless you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't know, a lot of times, I have sat in on cluster groups with individuals, teachers, social workers, individuals, case managers, and teachers were given the power to say that your child needs to be medicated. I'm like, where did that come from? Are they teaching medical doctor degrees in education now? I don't know. But I know one of the biggest, like you're saying, I started to write a book about it when I was going through my master's program in pediatrics, because I was a pediatric therapist. but it was Ritalin, the #1 weapon in America against African American males. They literally were paying young girls $500 a month to put their sons on Ritalin. Do you guys remember that? It was like in the early 90s. And then they put them all on SSI for ADHD and gave every young mother $500 a month to keep them on. It was a systematic attack. And that's the outcome we're seeing, is the kids that were addicted to Ritalin in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade, and the outcome of that is Generation X. That was my infomercial. And so, I'm sorry, Miss Rochelle. But yeah, it's definitely, it was an attack. It was an attack.
Oh gosh, you know, I could go on and on and on with this. It's so much good information, relevant information, but we are on a time frame. And so for those who are standing, we're going to try to quickly answer. I'm sorry, it has to be quickly, but we are on a time frame. And then we'll have to continue this discussion some other time. Yeah? You think so? Yes? How many? I just like to I like some feedback. How many you feel? Okay. All right. Very good. So
I'm going to be quick. I am happy that we are dealing with this mental health issue, but I know of an incident, and we talk about the fear of saying, that I have a mental problem. I know of someone who had been dealing with mental issue for 13 years, and she has 4 kids. And she was recommended to see a therapist. When she saw the therapist, they put her away and took her kids away. And she's battling to get her kids back. So I want to know if there are mechanisms in place that would help people like that. Because she had been taking care of her kids, and they just took the kids away thinking that she can't take care of them. Yes, ma'am.
I hear everything. Okay, Kim. You want to respond?
Let's
come back over here. Yes.
But that's okay.
That's where I'm waiting. I'm pointing to my right.
It's okay.
Okay. Oh, Cheryl. He said that was a question. The part that I heard,
I'm sorry.
and let me make sure that I heard you correctly. You said, what things can we put in place to help people advocate for getting their children back if they've been removed because of the parent having a mental health issue? Okay. Oh, that's a loaded question. I think as a community, we have to band together. As families, we have to band together to support people. There are people in place, and there are good people, because I know we are distrustful of the system. And having worked in children's services for many years before I went into independent practice, I do know that there are a group of advocates there in those agencies that are working to help individuals get their children back. Additionally, NAMI is a friend of families or individuals who have a mental health issue. So they have advocates that are there that will help you navigate the system and to be able to access those resources that you need to help you in situations like that. There are also people set up to they're called guardian ad litems that seek to speak on behalf of the children, who also can be of assistance in helping parents regain custody of their children as well. So it's reaching out to these agencies in the community, and as a community as a whole, supporting parents when they are experiencing things like this. Maybe even in the church, if we notice that there is a church member or a mom who is struggling with something, being there to support her on the front end, so that the situation doesn't arise where her children are removed from her, would probably be a better way of looking at that, because it's more preventative as opposed to being reactive after the circumstances happen.
My question is on the subject of depression, and some of your responses have already addressed certain aspects of this. But at certain times we're going through long-term situations. I've got a family member, hypothetically, that I'm going to have to take care of, and I don't know how long. I've got a legal battle that is going to take months or years to fight. So in those long-term situations that seem perhaps unending, what types of things do you suggest in order that we keep our head up?
I think that's a great question. Counseling is almost always indicated for a situation like that. You're right, things don't clean up neatly in a short timeline, and sometimes things go on for years. Getting support around you, whether that's in the church or with social groups or through a counselor, also can make a difference, because someone who is becoming depressed, that brain is starting to change, and the way they think about situations, the way they cope is starting to change. So it's important to get that kind of group around you in that situation. It may come to a point where medication might be an option. I don't think medication is needed for everybody. I think everybody's situation is different, and so you need to work with a provider who understands that too.
Added to that, as far as when he says get groups around you, there are support groups for individuals who are caregivers to people with disabilities or to their parents. There are support groups for people who've experienced divorce or who have experienced numerous losses. And sometimes being in the presence of other people who have experienced the thing that you are going through can be very helpful in some situations.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Now we have Michelle Martin.
One thing that I want to continue to address a little bit is the CIT officers. They're called crisis interventions officers, and like he said, they receive 40 hours in training, and they are volunteer officers that provide the support for people who are living with a mental illness. And currently we have trained in our system over 200 officers that are volunteers that will actually go out and help people living with a mental illness and their families. The collaboration is the Adam Board and NAMI Franklin County, and we work together to provide this service. And as the gentleman mentioned just a few minutes ago, that he had this situation with his family, NAMI has 3 family support groups that I facilitate all of those support groups, and I help families who have a loved one with a mental illness, and I advocate for them and their families. So think of NAMI, and Mental Health America also does the same types of things that we do. So on behalf of NAMI Franklin County, I just want to thank you all for allowing us to come and share this panel with you today.
Okay, the gentleman to my left.
All right, for those who don't know me, I am Darius Pritchard Sr. Okay, now, I grew up in a broken home. So, I actually grew up in an abusive home. My mother used to get abused by my stepfathers. So, you know, I seen the man down the street was a pimp. He had females out doing what. But like when my mom and my stepfather used to get into it, me and my brothers and sisters, we used to go outside. So by me seeing this stuff, you know, when I actually got 12, I got the courage to stand in front of them. So all my life going up through school, I got diagnosed with ADHD. That's what I got diagnosed with. I'm 33 now. What helped me was read my Bible. That's what helped me. My mother never put me on medication. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, you know what I'm saying? Just as the pastor said, you know what I'm saying? if you actually sit there with your kids, and you know, a lot of us busy now. I'm real busy. I work a lot, so I barely have time to sit with my sons. But when I sit with my sons, I open a good book and I read it. So, and I mean, that's very hard to do in this day and age. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, and finally, we'll take these three and then we'll conclude, okay? So.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a comment and then a question. I'm hearing a lot of talk about the things that parents are going through with the teachers at schools. And as an educator for a long time, I want to let you know, parents, there's a process that a teacher would go through before making a diagnosis of any kind. There's a long process. There are interventions that have to be made. There are meetings that have to be made. It's not something that's fly by night. It is not something that's just done on a whim. You have to go through many channels before you actually meet with a team, meet with a psychologist and all that to make that diagnosis for their child. But I will say this, that sister that was here that was talking about her child and what can we do to speak to young parents that have children. I know I would love to speak to her. I would really love to speak with her. My wife and I came here, we had been married 1 month, and this church embraced us, this church loved us, this church helped raise our children. And one of the things that I would always tell young people, you've got to find older people to be with. You can't talk to somebody who's raised, okay, thank you very much. Who's raised children, who has a 2-year-old and you have a 17-year-old. Life is different. Life is real different. The older they get, Robin used to tell us, she said, the older they get, the bigger the problem. Sometimes they're more expensive, sometimes there are legal issues involved. And that was one of the best pieces of advice that we ever got. It just helped make things a little different. But I do want to ask the community a question. As an educator, what would you suggest I do when I meet a child? For example, I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, I have a child come to my classroom Monday, when I'm introduced to her, she started meowing. What do I do? Yeah, Kim, she was meowing. Kibbles and bits meow. Yeah, she was meowing. What do I do as an educator when I meet this child, and the grandparents are the ones raising her, and she's hiding behind her auntie, and her mother, as the grandparents say, she's away. Oh, I know what that means. What do I do? She can't just sit there and do nothing and meow all day. I've got to get her ready for a state test. She's got to sit down. She's got to focus. She's got to pay attention. It can't be a free-for-all. What do you suggest I do?
It depends on the developmental stage of the child. I think that...
this is 2nd grade.
2nd grade, right. Well, that might be some form of manifestation of, like you're saying, of attachment disorder. You said the grandmother's raising her?
Yes.
One of the things, too, is that in terms of support of that, because I was thinking when she was talking about just the kids in general, but if in terms of a 2nd grader doing that, that's some type of a manifestation that she's doing. It's hard to determine why she would be doing that, but I would definitely have to address the family about that. Like, what about her communication and stuff, because that's something that's like an isolated incident, and it could just be a manifestation of something that she's dealing with. She doesn't know how to express that, how to express that.
I think the biggest thing you can do as an educator one of the things that I saw when I was working in the school system was there was a lack of connection sometimes between the school and the family. So I think it's bringing the family in, allowing the family to be an expert on that child. They know that child. Gathering that information from those grandparents, getting all of those pieces, and allowing them to trust that they will have a say-so in what happens to her. Many times they don't want to release that to the school because they feel like if I tell you too much, you're just going to run and do what you want to do with my child. So if you're partnering and allowing them to be an expert and then suggesting bringing in those individuals who can help that child, that is not, in my opinion, unless there's some trauma at school, that is not a school issue. So the school has to be involved in order to help the child and surround her in every area. But I think that's a mental health issue and maybe a home issue and maybe something relevant to the trauma that the child has experienced. But everybody working together and not making the grandparents feel as if they don't have a say-so or a right in what happens with that child.
The gentleman in the center, and then I understand that the gentleman in the orange has a question, so we're going to work our way over to you, and you'll be the last person that asks a question. Okay?
All right, I have 3 quick questions. All right, so first one, is it possible to perform like a self-diagnosis on any of these mental health conditions? 2, what are some general tips to just have a peace of mind that you maybe do with yourself or a friend or something? And 3, how common is it for college-age students to develop a mental disorder either in college or shortly thereafter?
So self-diagnosis, I would say no. Just in short, there are ways to be aware of certain symptoms, and like we talked about, depressed mood, lack of appetite, change in sleep patterns. But I would not encourage anybody to self-diagnose this any more than I would encourage someone to self-diagnose hypertension. You really do need a professional person to do that for you.
One of your questions was how common is it for college-age kids to develop? Very common. We have a book that we go by in our profession called the DSM. It's like the Bible of disorders. And many of the disorders that we see that become very serious manifest themselves right about the age of 18 to 21. So it is very common for that to happen to college-age students, maybe due to the stress of entering college and trying to be an adult and all of these things. But the short answer is yes, it is very common for them to just begin to emerge at that point in time. I think one of your other questions was how do you help a friend in that situation? Is that what you said? Oh, for your general tips. I think everybody on the panel has given some general tips. Those things that our parents used to tell us: exercise, go to bed at night, eat well, drink water, do not isolate yourself, be social, interact with other people. She talked about coping skills. Some people like music. Some people like to journal. Some people need somebody to talk to, so maybe it's therapy. There are a variety of coping strategies that you can utilize, but one of the biggest things with college students and your friends would probably be leading them to the help they need and being non-judgmental. Being that person that's just there to listen and kind of leading them to where they need to be to get help.
I think one of the extremely important things is to know the warning signs of a mental health condition and to know the warning signs of suicide. If an individual that you're interacting with and you're seeing them on a regular basis and all of a sudden you're noticing that maybe they're not keeping their hygiene together, they're seeming disheveled, lethargic, maybe a little confused and off balance. If they're not eating, hyper-sleeping, insomnia. If you know the warning signs of a mental health challenge yourself, then you can identify that in your friend. And if an individual is talking about, I don't have any reason to be here tomorrow, my friends, I'm just a burden on my family. If they're looking for ways to complete suicide or hurt themselves, if they're reckless or out of control behavior, if they're suddenly exhibiting particular types of behaviors like stomping out at 90 on a 25-mile-an-hour street, teetering on bridges, or doing particular behaviors that are not conducive to having a future, that is when you really, really want to get your friends some help. And you definitely want to engage them. Are you considering suicide? Don't think that asking a person, are they considering completing suicide, if that's going to put it on their mind. Either it's on their mind or it's not. And so it might be just an opportunity to open up some dialogue, like, hey, I've just been noticing you've been a little bit disheveled and confused. You okay? Because, you know, I'm here for you. If you need me, if you need to talk, text me at night. I see you're having some challenges. I want you to know you're not alone. How about that? And then just, you know, make sure that you keep them engaged. If they're in treatment, encourage them to stay in treatment. Because a lot of times people will get in treatment and start feeling better and they stop taking their medication because they're feeling better. But guess what? The only reason you're feeling better is because you're in treatment, taking your medication. So you want to include them, encourage them. You know, and don't use stigmatizing or bullying or stereotyping, discriminating type of language, even jokingly. Oh, dude, you know you crazy, quit playing. That's not conducive to helping them in their future.
Just one thing to piggyback on her signs of suicide. Also, something that a lot of people miss is that the person who was feeling really bad actually shows signs that they feel a little bit better, and so they start giving you their things. Hey, I want you to have this. It's one of my favorite shirts. Or I want you to do this with me. So you have to be very careful if you've been dealing with somebody who's kind of had those moments where they felt bad and they all of a sudden feel really good. That is also on the list of suicidal warning signs.
Yeah, that is, that's when a person has made the decision to complete. They're okay. And when you're struggling with the idea, should I, shouldn't I, and you're wavering, that's when you have the challenge. But when an individual decides, I'm going to complete, then they're okay. Then they're saying, oh, hey, you know, everything's all good. It's all good. And you cannot always know the warning signs of suicide. I had a individual, 18-year-old, because I was doing some pediatric therapy, and she completed, and I did not have an indication that she was completing. I knew she was in foster care. I knew she was turning 18. She was terrified to turn 18, because at 18, you're emancipated out of foster care. She had no family, no support system past that. And unfortunately, she was with a foster parent who was a foster parent and not a parent past fostering. So she was really challenged, and I went on a deployment to counsel Katrina victims, and she completed as soon as I left to go to New Orleans. And so it was devastating, but you have to know that another person's decisions, you cannot control other people. If you have a family member or a friend who does complete suicide, it is not your fault. There's not a lot that you could have, you know, personally, just like, oh, I should have did this, I should have did that. You could do that for the rest of your life. If a person decides and takes that decision to complete, then that was ultimately their decision. It's not your decision to, you know. And you definitely want to just, you know the warning signs. That's the biggest thing you could do to help a friend.
Thank you, Marla. That's why this mental health first aid would be so good for us to take, so to know the warning signs. And just two more questions. This gentleman right here in the orange, I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
You spoke on depression back in, I really don't need that. Back in 1995, when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and I lost my sight, and I went into a real bad depression after the operation, and didn't want to go outside, didn't want to be bothered with nobody. I just slept a lot, ate a lot, you can tell that. And I just, you know, I was mad. I was mad at God. I was mad at Jesus. You know, why are you doing this to me? And then later on I understood why not. And my son come to me, he's like, Dad, you can't do this, just laying around doing nothing, depressed all the time. You got to get up out this house. So, you know, we go here, we go there. I think I'm gonna sit down when we get back home. Now we get ready to go someplace else. So he ran me so much, I was too tired to be the person. He did me like that for, man, just every week we going somewhere. I mean, every week a ball game. We going back to the softball field. People want to see you. I don't want to see them, but we going anyway. And you know, my son, he big. You know, he big. So I wasn't going to argue with him. So, you know, depression though, but it brought me out of it. And you know, I thank God for that.
Amen.
Somebody mentioned something about how we need more people of our color represented in the mental health field. I graduated last year from Western with a social work degree, and it's not even here, trust me. But while I was going through the program, I had a friend who was social work, school social work. And she kept running to the program where black families kept wanting her to label their children as having mental health problems when they didn't. I mean, a child got an A just because the dad probably supplied with Jordans. That's not somebody with mental health. That just means a different way of encouraging the child to do well in school. You know, so she kept running into that where the families, particularly black families, were forcing her to label the children, and the families were putting pressures on the principals to force her to do that over and over and over again till she quit. This also happened when a second friend of mine had the same experience, and so she quit because she couldn't, in consciousness, put a label on a child who didn't have, you know, those problems. That ended up affecting me. So when I graduated, I have my license, but I have not practiced in that field, and I'm seeking a different field to go into business because that's also part of the degree I earned. So how do you encourage some of us who came into the field with hope of helping our people, you know, be better diagnosed and help them find the resources? But when we're put in a situation where we're trying to do that, it's our own people telling us that, you know, we don't want what you know, the truth. We just want you to help us put a label on so we can get tax breaks from the government or something like that. Because that was the reason why they were forcing my friends to put those labels on them. How did somebody like me who came into that field to try to help, you know, keep going when I'm put into that situation?
So I appreciate you sharing those experiences, and you know, one thing I would do is just encourage you all to stay strong in terms of the education piece, because I think it's generational. There's cycles, so people are trying to overcome those social determinants, right? They're trying to figure out how to survive, and so being able to respond to those situations with education, I think there's a huge part of just continuing to have that conversation and advocating for those children, letting them know there's other options besides labeling them and what the impact of labeling your child now looks like in the future, right? So I might label them that now. You may get this support now. What does that mean if they want to go to college? What does that look like if they want to get a job in order to maybe help shift some of their thinking? And some people will respond to that and some people won't, but I would just encourage you to continue to bring it to people, because there are going to be some people who can hear that, who's never had that presented to them. But if we walk away from the field, we don't give people an opportunity who want to learn something different, an opportunity to hear that message.
I think also taking the time to explore where you fit within the world of counseling, social work, substance abuse. Because there are a variety of positions, and maybe those first positions just didn't fit what they wanted to do. I think Sharonda's right as far as educating families about, you know, the diagnosis piece and the receiving of benefits, and that definitely is necessary. But I think as new graduates, and I think as people coming into the field, you have to get your feet wet in a variety of settings and areas to make sure that you have found that place where you land and you feel like you fit and you make a difference. We do need more people of color being social workers and counselors and substance abuse counselors and all of these types of areas, because obviously we've heard earlier that part of the stigma is that there's no one that looks like us. And I would just encourage you and maybe your friends to just keep looking. There are a variety of ways that you can utilize the same exact degree in a different capacity. Because all of us here probably have done work that is similar, but it's very, very different from the other person. And so we just took the time, we dug in, hopefully we all had mentors or people that encouraged us, and then one day we found that area that just clicked, and we knew this is where I'm going to be, and this is where I'm going to be most useful.
And I agree, and I applaud you for sure, because we do need people, our people of color addressing the issues. And I am very similar to you. I refuse to just sit and, I'd rather advocate for the child rather than to label them and then have them have to deal with this label, because I knew how significant that was for the child's life, that they would have to go at least their 12 years through school with that label. So I didn't want to have that be the first thing that I did just to appease this organization, when I knew it was not the right thing to do for the child. So yeah, we definitely need more people like you and I in that industry to advocate, because there are children being labeled just because of the color of their skin and not the content of their character or their ability or capacity to do what's necessary to achieve success in their futures. So I do applaud you, and stay focused on your just on your perspective that no, this is not right, and yes, we do need more people like you.
This has been a wonderful experience. Can we give a round of applause to our panel? And we're about to wrap up and leave. I want to say thank you for staying. I think the amount of you on the stage just gives credence to how many people this is affecting in our community and how important this subject is. I just want to wrap up by saying probably one of the best stories of mental health in Scripture is on King Saul. And you will remember that King Saul used to go out of his mind, and every time he would go out of his mind, he would ask every time for David to come play a song. Come play a song of the Lord. Come play a song of the Lord into my heart. And so I want to suggest one of the best ways for you to deal with whatever you're going through, be it from extremes or regular stress of every day. You got to put something from the Lord in your heart. Put something from the Lord on your mind, whether it's a song, whether it's a script. Something that you can grab onto to encourage yourself. Then when David got a little older, he stopped playing harps. He said, man, sometimes you just got to encourage your own self, because there are times when your support group and everybody is not around. So I want to just close and seal this moment by, if you can just grab the hand of somebody that you're seated next to, and you're grabbing their hand as a sign that they are not alone. You're grabbing their hand as a sign that whatever they're going through, they are not by themselves. How many know you can't make it through this life by yourself? Someone brought this out. One of the first signs of being in a bad mental space is isolation. Don't you ever think that what you're going through, you're by yourself, or that somebody else isn't dealing with it. You know, we get this complex of Elijah where we're saying, man, we're the only one going through this. No, somebody's going through it right now, and because we're not talking, we feel like we're all alone. Let's pray. Father, I just believe in my spirit that you were pleased with our dialogue today. In fact, there are showers of blessings happening outside us right now. And I just receive it as your sign is saying, will you appreciate the fact that we are dialoguing about what people are dealing with. King Saul wasn't the first and not the last one to deal with moments and times in life where we are frustrated, where we're going through it. Elijah is not the first and not the last one who would ever open up his mouth and say, this is enough, I just want to die. But Father, we touch our neighbor's hand on our left, on our right as a sign to let them know that they are not alone, that someone is here, that they have somebody that is willing to listen to them, to pray with them. And above all else, we thank you, God, because your word informs us that you are a friend that sticketh closer than any brother. Thank you for your power in our lives. Thank you for your presence here with us today. I pray a special blessing on our guests that were with us today. I pray that you will pour back into them the time that they spent here, and that you will bless them for being a blessing to us. As we head into a new week, we do so now understanding that we don't need to start our week without the power of the Lord. So that as we take Jesus with us, we can have a powerful week in him. I pray for anyone under the sound of my voice that is in a bad mental space right now, and that you would give them above anything else, give them the peace of the Lord Jesus. You said that you would keep us in perfect peace if our mind is stayed on you. So help us to put our trust in you. In Jesus' name we pray. Let the church say amen. I want to do three things real quick. Before you leave, don't go nowhere, panel. Before you leave, number one, turn your surveys in. Also, last week, you were given the card for the nominating committee. Some of you may have, but I didn't think I would have to say this. One card per person, please. You may not, as a church member, turn in 5 cards for the large committee. I don't hear nobody here. 1 card per person. Amen? Amen? All right, 1 card per person. Please turn those nominating cards into Pastor-elect. Turn the mental health surveys into the ushers. And then at 6 o'clock this evening, what time did I say? 6 o'clock this evening for AY, a screening, a movie called Love Different, a phenomenal movie that all of you all that are here now, we welcome you back to. The ushers are coming now. That prayer will serve as our benediction. However, if you would like to, after you're ushered out, I don't know if they can stay for another couple of minutes. Maybe they want to because they don't have an umbrella and it's raining real bad. And so if you want to just tell them how much you appreciate them coming, we would really appreciate that. And then all the way out, we mentioned this at the beginning, Karen Phipps, who's running for Court of Common Pleas. You may need her now or later. She will shake your hand at the door as you leave. And if you were blessed today and you were not able to sow into the ministry here, the deacons will be at the door to receive your monetary gifts. God bless you so much. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we will have our wonderful health fair. And we promise to have a wonderful day in Jesus. God bless you. We'll see you at 6 o'clock this evening.